The Seals in Teal, a San Jose Sharks discussion channel with your host, Lars Yonk. Hey Sharks fans, we need to talk about one of the big misconceptions among fans. Are we in a retool or a rebuild? Let's discuss. Many fans think based off the 2019-2020 season, with the struggles for the team, that entering this offseason, we would be going through a rebuild. This is absolutely incorrect. The Sharks did have to deal with some players, like Brendan Dillon, Barclay Goodrow, and Patrick Marleau. To a lot of fans, this may have been a sign of things to come and the start of a rebuild was going to happen, but in fact, it's not. It's quite the opposite. You see, what the Sharks are doing is they're going through a retool. These trades were only to recuperate some lost assets from other deals in the past. Going into this offseason's draft, we needed to get back some picks. And that's what we did. Even though we had to trade some players that were a great part of our organization and played some amazing games for the Sharks, we were only doing this to help us go forward into the next season. As of right now, based off everything we've heard from General Manager Doug Wilson, we are not rebuilding. We are retooling. Here's the big difference. A rebuild is trading away all your big players and core in an effort to completely rebuild the franchise. A retool is selling a few pieces but keeping your core players intact. This is something the Sharks did back in 2014-2015 when we missed the playoffs. We had to get rid of some players who had been there for a bit, but we still kept the core alive. That 2015 offseason, we brought in some new players, a new coach, Peter DeBoer, a new system, and as a result, we went to the finals that year in 2015-2016. That is an example of a good retool. Another great example of a short-term retool, but is going to pay a lot of dividends for this NHL team going forward, is the Boston Bruins. Now, most fans don't like the Boston Bruins, but what they did in the last couple seasons before they started making the playoffs again was they did a little bit of a couple season retool. Here's what they did. First off, they got rid of players like Milan Lucic, Dougie Hamilton, and a couple other players, but in exchange they got 4 first-round picks. Some of them they used for Charlie McAvoy and Jake DeBrusk, who are now part of their core going forward. And they still have Bergeron, Marchand, Krejci, Chara, and a couple other players. A rebuild is an example of what Ottawa did in 2018-2019. They got rid of everyone, including Erik Karlsson, who is now with the Sharks. They got rid of Mark Stone, Matt Duchene, Ryan Dzingel, Mike Hoffman, Derek Brassard, Dion Phaneuf, and so many players who were a big part of that 2017 playoff run for the Ottawa Senators. There are other teams you may be wondering like, what are the LA Kings doing, or what is this franchise doing here? So, for example, some teams go through a longer retool than a rebuild. Like the Kings, they still have Kopitar, Brown, and Doughty, who are core players to the team, and they've kind of just built around them. There are several teams who always are holding on to key players, and that's been one thing for the Sharks. Again, there are several teams who have a core, but sometimes they just don't produce. It took a while for St. Louis. They had a decent core, but they did have to shed off some players, some dead cap, and that allowed them to sign some key free agents and some trades they made for their run in 2019. But to clarify, for the most part of this video is, a lot of Sharks fans thought we were going to start rebuilding. But honestly, that's not the case. Most teams go through a rebuild would receive a letter from management about changes going forward. We still have a core of Logan Couture, Tomas Hertl, Timo Meier, Evander Kane, even Joe Thornton, Brent Burns, Marc-Edouard Vlasic, and, yes, Erik Karlsson. Unless we traded all of them away for assets, that would be a complete rebuild. But right now, we're retooling for 2020-2021, with the hopes of bringing in some new assets to the team, and maybe a new coach to help the struggling core. I hope this clarifies some things for fans unsure of where the team is going from here. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you like what you hear. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more content coming your way. Thanks again. This is the Seals and Teal, a San Jose Sharks discussion channel, with your host, Lars Young. Thanks again.